Thank you and welcome. We really appreciate you all being here. If y'all don't know who I am, my name is Mr. Hunter, Jerome Hunter. I'm one of the co-founders of the Seattle Story Collective. I'm here alongside my partner, my friend, the other co-founder of Seattle Story Collective. And we are just so excited to be here to create history, witness history, and feel the power of the young voices that have participated in our first ever cohort of the Seatown Story Collective TEDx student speaker event. What's really meaningful to us is that with all of the TEDx events that have taken place, this is one of the first that is specific to centering youth voices. And it's done through our organization, Seatown Story Collective, and we operate in 3 principles. Our first principle is centering the power of first-person narrative. We draw from oral historians, poets, authors, journalists, the youth, people with lived expertise. And so this is something that is really meaningful to us. Our second core value is amplifying and centering historically silenced voices. And so this could be, that's okay. Youth, people of color, LGBTQ, single parents, people who might have a distinguished taste for pickles and peanut butter, anybody who might be on the margins that need to be heard, right? We want to center that. And the last is really having a deep, true belief in the possibility and potential of our youth. As former educators and former classroom teachers, we see it every day. And it's just giving them the opportunity, holding space for these young people to share their experiences. And we always say, speak the truth, even if your voice trembles, right? And if your voice trembles a lot, feel free to use note cards. We're going to welcome our first youth to the red dot. So our first presenter is a 15-year-old student at the University of Washington Robinson Center UW Academy program. They're an enthusiastic member of the UW Debate Society, a former national level debate competitor in high school, and they're about to share with us their unique relationship with Lady Luck. Please welcome Ada Liu to the red dot.
I like to think I had a pretty typical high school experience, dealing with MCQs and SAQs and DBQs and social cues, grinding my extracurriculars, starting a cult, attending school dances. Okay, so maybe not all of those. I didn't attend any school dances. I mean, what do you take me for? Someone socially competent? But no, while my peers were getting dates and getting those dates to go in their fancy clothes to homecoming on the weekends, I was dressed up in formal clothes to go to speech and debate tournaments. And somehow, amidst the turmoils of learning to become a speech and debater, I had somehow started a cult dedicated to pouring water onto trees. Yep, there's me and my loyal disciples, engaging in behaviors of worship. See, it all started with a game of Super Mario Party. And if you've ever played, you know it's essentially like a digitalized board game. And like any other good board game, it is basically all luck. So after I shot from dead last to first place, I was crowned as the one favored by Lady Luck, just as an offhanded comment. I have never taken anything offhanded in my life. I decided I was not just going to enjoy Lady Luck's favor, I was going to curry it, which is what led me to this pouring water behavior. You see, at every speech and debate tournament, before I get to discover whether I made the final elimination round, I would go outside, get some water, and pour it on the nearest bush or tree, and pray that Lady Luck would please bless my speech results. And, shockingly, it was working. Over more than a dozen tournaments, I broke to finals in at least one event every single time. And the practice started catching on. As you can tell, the rest of my team started adopting my bizarre rituals, seeing that it was surprisingly effective, and soon I was leading half a dozen of my fellow speech and debaters outdoors to pray to Lady Luck at every tournament. But while the cult was essentially in a life of its own, I took this a step further. I started praying before every important, significant event in my life, whether it be an important presentation, a school project, or a big exam. This all came to a head at my first calculus midterm in college, where I was running late and I was like, I'm sure it doesn't really matter if I put any water on a tree, because to be honest, I'm just going to do math. It has nothing to do with whether I pray to Lady Luck. That midterm single-handedly broke my 2 years of no crying streak. But as I was bawling my eyes out over horizontal asymptotes, I came to wonder, does Lady Luck actually have an effect on my success? Surprisingly, yes, she does, but most likely not in the way you think. Stanford's Department of Psychology conducted a study investigating a gene that is known to make someone be less proficient at exercise. So first, they had all of their volunteers run on a treadmill and then measured their CO2 to O2 exchange rate, which is just a measure of how well you're doing cardiovascular activity. And then they genotyped their volunteers to see who actually had this gene deficiency. Afterwards, they split the volunteers into 2 groups, regardless of whether they actually had the deficiency. Then, one group were told that they had the deficiency and the other group wasn't. Then, all of them ran the treadmill test again. And here are what the results show. This red bar is the group that were told they were genotyped for being deficient. And let's remember, these people weren't actually all deficient. And all of them performed significantly worse, while the other group had a slight marginal improvement from being told that they were more protected for exercise. For reference, that dot over there is how much this gene actually matters in the grand scheme of things on how fit you are, and that dot to your left, your right, shows how much being told about this matters. Which means that overall, this proves that what you believe to be true about yourself has great impacts, even on your physical being. It's not just these volunteers felt more tired or gave up more easily. No, their bodies were physically less proficient at processing oxygen when they believed they were going to be less proficient. And so, after learning this, I came to wonder, how can we take this principle, the idea of the placebo, the idea that having a belief and an anticipation something will happen will change our outcomes? And so, as your favorite novice cult leader, I come to present to you the 3.5 steps to gaslighting yourself into success. So first, step 1, the trigger. The trigger in a medical setting is what you think as the saline solution, or the pill that does absolutely nothing. When you're trying to manufacture your own placebo, such as in my case, putting water in the local foliage, it's important to keep 3 things in mind. First, it has to be something intentional. You have to take intention to take this action. Second of all, it has to have something with a clear purpose and preferably with a clear reminder. And finally, it has to be very easy, because if it's not easy, you won't do it. Now, this makes clothing a good choice. It is well documented that putting on a certain types of clothes puts you in a certain kind of mindset. For example, the Journal for the Experimental Social Psychology discovered that when 70 participants were taking a memory test and half were given lab coats and half were not given lab coats, the people wearing lab coats did better. However, it's especially notable that only those told that it was a lab coat and not something as associated with good intelligence, such as a painter's smock, saw this improvement, which showed that by having this constant reminder that they were representing someone smart and someone competent, they were actually embodying these traits in themselves. In the book, The Alter Ego Effect, Todd Herman takes this a step further, claiming that it's possible to make yourself almost like a whole alter ego, a version of yourself that's more competent, confident, and assured by putting on a piece of clothing that moves you to the mindset. Just like Clark Kent tearing off his shirt to reveal that he's actually wearing spandex and his underwear on the outside, suddenly becoming Superman, you too can unlock your better identity, just preferably with your shirt intact. We can see examples of celebrities using this, such as Kobe Bryant, who had the identity of the Black Mamba, which he took on when he was on the court. And he claimed that this made him more focused and a better basketball player, while separating it from his day identity. The clothing and the action of stepping onto the court put him into a whole different mindset that was able to change his performance. And so we move on to step 2, the ritual. The trigger is only as effective as the number of times you use it. And the main magic of the placebo effect in gaslighting yourself into success is that you can incorporate your placebo to not just be an element that you do, but rather an element of your identity, of your strategy. Once you begin associating your trigger with doing well, you will then do even better. For example, whenever I need to clean, I put on a nice skirt, I put on a blouse, and my mom tells me, "Why are you dressed up in formal clothes to dig socks out from under your bed?" And while this might be a little bit silly, the reality is, by putting on a different set of clothes and doing this every time I need to clean, I associate dressing up nicely as my cleaning attire. But this puts me into the mindset to be able to clean. Furthermore, Harvard Medical School explored this in a study where they took pills that were literally labeled placebo and gave them to people who were suffering from migraines. Even though the pills had placebo written on them, the migraine sufferers still saw a 50% reduction in pain. It was the action, the ritual, the daily taking of the pill that was resolving some of their pain, and not just any actual active ingredient. So, it's with consistency and discipline that we are best able to even trick ourselves into doing better. Which brings us to step 3, the belief. Arguably the most core component of the placebo effect, because the idea is that by believing you are something greater, you become something greater. Hypnosis is an altered state of mind, where you're essentially just more suggestible. But what do you think is the number one factor to whether someone can be hypnotized? It's whether they believe they can. And for the same reason, people who believe they can manifest good luck their way, or that they believe that they can pray to Lady Luck and get better results in their speech, are the ones who will actually see this. It is by believing more than any of the other elements that we are actually able to achieve great success. But finally, the point 5 that almost everybody was likely questioning, the reality. Here's the fact. As soon as I stepped on the stage and started my talk, you were probably thinking, but it's just a placebo. I've named it as the placebo. And really, there is no concrete tie to being able to change your fate at the drop of a hat. And you know what? This is true. You will not magically learn chemistry, you will not fix your broken leg, and you will not wish your way into that job you wanted but that interview you botched. But here's the other reality. You probably aren't achieving most of your goals anyways. Because here is the reality. Whatever you want to do is hard to do, and you probably haven't gotten very far in it. But how much of the reason has been because you've been holding yourself back? For example, if you want to start a business, you can't start by thinking, most startups come to fail. You can't begin by thinking that I might go bankrupt over this. I'm not saying that it's not important to have contingency plans, but when we make the contingency plan the first plan, we rob ourselves of the ability to take that leap to actually achieve the things we want. Because you cannot hurt yourself by believing you can, but you do hurt yourself by believing you can't. So even if it seems silly, the placebo can be the first step in setting your intention of believing you can. And maybe you can, whatever it be. I want to get into medical school. Maybe you want to write a book. You want to start a business. All of it starts by believing you can. So, I'm not a theologist. Maybe Lady Luck is only as real as the placebo she gives me. Maybe throughout all of human civilization, we've all been worshiping the same higher power, and I've just given her the name Lady Luck. Or maybe, who knows, I'm the prophet and Lady Luck is the one true religion. I don't know. This is not my job, and frankly, it doesn't matter very much. So, do whatever makes you more successful. Go put on a lab coat. Go put on a nice skirt and go clean. Go eat a Tic Tac and write placebo on the can. I don't know, whatever it is. But sometimes the Lulu really is the Salulu. Thank you.
So our next talk is about a transformative experience they had at one of the great wonders of the world. He's a ninth grader. Anthony Bruce is a ninth grader, a trumpet player, a saber fencer who enjoys playing video games, fishing, and walking his dog. Let's put our hands together for Anthony Bruce.
If I asked you right now where you are, you would respond with the Ballard Public Library, obviously. But if I asked you, is this place pretty interesting? Then you'd respond with an opinion. Now, one is a fact and one is opinion. Which one matters more? I'm sure you know by now that facts are facts. They're always true. But I'm also sure you've heard people tell you it's your opinion that matters most. How do you know if it's your opinion? This might seem like a ridiculous or even a paradoxical question. After all, how can our own opinions not even belong to us? An ordinary-looking photo taken at the Great Wall of China led an 8-year-old boy to this rabbit hole. And that was me. Oh. Growing up half Chinese, it always felt like there were two me's. There was the me that most people saw and knew, and this me spoke English. But I also had a second side. This me only spoke Chinese and interacted with my Chinese family and friends. It was not just a language that separated these two sides, but it was also ideas, personalities, and opinions, things that make a person. I've been to China a few times in my life to visit my family. The first time I went was in 2017. I remember feeling excited, nervous, didn't know what to expect, and I had to pee. I remember that year, American tourism was very common. Written under most Chinese billboards and signage, there was English translations. It was this odd feeling that both halves of me were alive at the same time. There was this one moment I remember at the Great Wall of China when we were taking pictures and this tourist came up to us. She was Chinese and she wanted us to take a picture for her. As we lined up our camera, she stopped us because she wanted the picture to be with somebody, but not just anybody. She asked for the American girl, my sister. The craziest part was she didn't even know us. Yes, I was a little grouchy that nobody wanted my picture. Yeah, and looking back, I can see why. But even then, I wondered how taking a picture with an American girl was so important to a Chinese woman visiting a Chinese monument. I also visited China last summer. Even though we hadn't gone in 4 years, the experience couldn't have felt more different. I remember when we arrived in the airport, we were immediately separated for being non-citizens. The process of getting through customs was an interrogation. To further contrast the trip in 2017, a lot of the translations were gone from the billboards and signs, and there wasn't a single American tourist the whole time over the 3 weeks and the 2 cities we visited. One of the most memorable moments from that trip was when we were in a cafe and my mom's friend from high school brought up our appearances. She said, "I can see some Chinese in your son." but you can't tell there is any Chinese in your daughter. I remember the heavy pause and the silence in the room after that statement. As an American, I can clearly see something changed in China. But what changed in America? First, you should look to yourselves. What do you think about when China is brought up? You might think about polluting the environment or taking jobs or anything else. The list goes on and on. But what opinion does it have you formed on China? Only you can speak for yourself. But in 2022, the Pew Research Center found that 82% of Americans had a negative view on China, while in 2017, this number was a mere 47%. Naturally, this begs the question, what could have caused these changes? One explanation to this could be the COVID-19 pandemic, which divided the globe. That year that we were apart, we were able to form opinions that weren't completely fair. But there's still something that remains unanswered, and that is, what are the causes of these opinions? In 2021, the Pew Research Center asked adult Americans why they held a negative view on China. 20% talked about the human rights, 19% said something about the economy, 17% talked about the political system, 13% talked about the threats to the US, and 12% talked about the US-China relationship. If we look at all these views, we see something in common with most of them. Most of them have to do with governments or government relations. Adding our own government to the picture, we can see that in 2017, we actually had a pretty good relationship with China. We were affirming each other's policies and showing mutual respect together. Well, since then, there's been a trade war, a pandemic, and alleged spy balloons shot down last year. Now, the opinion between the people of our two countries and the relationship between the governments of our two countries has broken down at around the same time. What could this mean? Could our governments be manipulating our opinions to match their agenda? Is that what I saw in China? And that what the studies and surveys have shown? I don't know, but in 2018, an effort by the former president of the US, an effort was made by the former president of the US using the CIA to spread negative information to the Chinese people about their government through their social media sources and news outlets. If a government is willing to try to manipulate the opinion of a nation overseas, then how much more likely would it be that they're trying to manipulate their own opinion? Again, I don't know. I just want to conclude by saying we can't know for sure if our governments are trying to turn us against each other. And we can't always know where some of our ideas and opinions came from, and if they're even our own. But we can question them. As someone who has a connection to both countries, I feel I'm allowed to be separated from the opinions of both. That separation allows me to see change, and it allows me to ask how and why. Because sometimes I feel like I'm two different people, but sometimes I'm just one person who isn't part of either side. I want to share something that I learned based on what I saw. We should step back and we should ask about our ideas and opinions. We should value logic and facts over emotions, and we should question the common narrative, because your own logic is always more powerful than that of the crowd's, because you know where it came from. It came from you.
That was it's encouraging as an educator to just hear the critical thinking. It's really important. Media literacy is a big focus of mine, and I think it's important that our young folks take a moment to step back and take a look at the information that's out there. All right, our next speaker, our next guest on the red dot is Grayson Niccolls. She's an 8th grader. She's the captain of her soccer team, also part of her school's leadership crew. In addition to that, she loves baking, reading, the ocean, and, of course, her family. Today, she's going to share a deeply personal journey through family changes. Let's give a warm welcome to Grayson Niccolls.
According to the Washington State Department of Health, there were over 22,000 divorces in 2022. That's about 49% of marriages. In 2023, my parents got divorced. Divorce is so common nowadays, but still so new to those who experience it. While eventually, hopefully, everyone gets to a better place, there's not a lot to look forward to in the short term of divorce. My divorce bucket list was 1, new room. 2, double Christmas. And 3, parents who can cohabitate. In the past 8 months, 2 of those things have been checked off the list. Christmas was awesome. I got stuff for my new room. In all honesty though, divorce is hard, sometimes unexpectedly. Take, for example, my dad moving out of my childhood home. I knew he was going to. I had been told weeks in advance, and I knew that it was the next logical step in their divorce. But knowing those facts and being okay with those facts didn't change the weight that I felt seeing his side of the bed empty. Moral of the story, divorce will be difficult, but it doesn't have to be as difficult. One thing that is key is communication. In divorce, most of the time the focus is on the parents, but it is important to remember that the kids are going through a divorce too. Communication is key. We've all heard the phrase to the point where it's cliche, but it really is key when supporting your kids in divorce. This starts with talking to your kids, asking them questions. How do you feel about this? Are you okay with this? One of the reasons that divorce is so hard is because you have this view of how your life looks. Your parents together, one house, even if your parents fight all the time. Suddenly, that all changes. Now it's 2 houses, 2 families, 2 different dynamics, almost 2 different versions of yourself. Kids going through divorce go through all of that without having control over anything. That's why talking to them is such an important part of supporting them, because it gives them back control over their life. Also remember that communication is a 2-way street. You have to talk to your kids. Tell them how you feel. If what they say is hard for you to hear, tell them and make a compromise, rather than shutting them down or going behind their back. This communication especially applies when talking about dating. No one really knows how to date after a divorce. Some parents are ready right away, some need to take time. But whatever's best for you might not be best for your kid. That's why it's important to have a conversation about dating with your kids before there's a new partner to introduce. And when the time comes to introduce a new partner, remember that you chose them, not your kids. You're asking your children to accept and spend time with a new person that they may not resonate with. That's not something you can force. Divorce is not a 2-sided process. Everyone going through it is on their own side, facing their own problems, and that can feel really lonely. If everyone is trying to keep themselves up, everyone will slowly come falling down. That's why you need to be a teepee, and communication helps you do that. Talking through your problems helps your family keep everyone up, including themselves. This process has taught me a lot about the value of communication and how much we need to use it in our daily lives. Often when I'm articulate or thoughtful, I'm told that I'm mature for my age. But why is that? Kids are told to listen to adults, shut down when they ask questions because adults don't need reasons. But asking questions because something doesn't make sense to you is okay. Standing up for yourself in a constructive way is okay. Setting boundaries is okay. In our society, the feelings of others are sometimes valued even more than our own, and in that, directness gets lost in the fray. But our society cannot be afraid of constructive assertiveness. I remember when I was younger, my dad was struggling because he had to have a hard conversation with someone at work. I made him a card that read, "You can be respectful and assertive at the same time." Those words are very true. Our society needs to learn how to communicate better, and that starts with teaching our kids. Kids are the future, and the future needs to start now. Thank you.
Yes, communication. I just had a conversation about communication yesterday, and it's so, so critical. Thank you for that. Up next is Dorothy Bryan. She's a 10th grader who loves softball and is also an animal lover. When she's not at school or working at the animal sanctuaries, she's at home with her Jack Russell Terrier, Ripley. She believes that animal ethics and conservation go hand in hand. Let's dive into an eye-opening perspective on the food industry. Let's give it up for Dorothy Bryan.
This is a cow. Yes, I know, we should all be very, very familiar with them by now, except for one thing. What is the average natural lifespan of a cow? No one knows. Such a common animal, one that you've learned about since kindergarten, or one that maybe you eat every day. And yet, no one knows the average natural lifespan of a cow. In fact, all we know is the average lifespan of a cow before it gets executed, which is about 1.5 to 2 years. Now, on the farms that produce the meat that you eat daily, these animals are given drugs, antibiotics, and chemicals to make them produce faster and better, whether that be to sustain them in crazy living conditions, to make them produce and give birth to baby after baby after baby, to make more and more milk, or to grow so insanely large that they can't even hold up their own weight. Either way, these animals are being exploited and mistreated for our benefit. But you wouldn't have any idea of it when browsing the aisles in the grocery store, seeing labels like all natural, ethically raised, or cage-free. Now, when I was a little girl, I always loved all of the animals, and it never ever occurred to me that some of the animals I thought of so dearly were being mistreated so horribly. As I got older, I learned more about the issues with the food industry, but I never fully realized the extent of these issues on the human population. Now, humane washing is a term that refers to the labels that I mentioned earlier. These labels, plastered on meat, dairy, and egg products, aren't actually legally defined by the US Department of Agriculture or the FDA. Now, although they may look wholesome when accompanied by a picture of a happy-looking pig or a fuzzy cow, the majority of them don't actually include any animal welfare requirements whatsoever. For example, all natural means nothing. It only includes post-slaughter treatment, and therefore has nothing to do with how the farms treat the animals while they're alive. Now, hormone-free only encompasses the use or the absence of the use of hormones in dairy cows. Free-range birds are given access to the outdoors, but the time and the space permitted varies widely. And finally, cage-free. Did you know cage-free chickens only get 1 square foot of living space each? And those chickens unlucky enough to not be cage-free are forced to live in battery cages less than the size of an iPad. Now, every month, I make the trek from Seattle, Washington, over to Whidbey Island, where I volunteer at a farm called Dehgan Farm Sanctuary. I work with animals that come from abusive backgrounds, and once donated or rescued by Dehgan, they live stress-free, harvest-free lives. And I get to experience the true personalities of these animals. Did you know that goats are just like puppies? And cows are basically giant cats trying to get all up in whatever you're doing. And there's this one hen on the farm. She couldn't have a baby chick of her own, so she adopted a baby chick. Yes, some random other hen's chick, and she's acting like it's her own child. And yes, that's a chick right there in her wing. It's incredible to see these human behaviors and human emotions being exhibited in animals, something you never would have seen if they were being raised for slaughter on abusive farms. These animals deserve so much more love and respect, and the closest that we've gotten to that is the term organic. Obviously, all organic products tend to be better for you and for the environment, but they also include some animal welfare requirements. Now, chickens underneath the organic label are given 2 square feet of living space each and have constant access to the outdoors, even if it's just a small pen. These are relatively huge improvements on the other unregulated terms. The defined differences between organic products and humane wash products make buying organic a great way to counteract the profits of abusive farms. Another aspect that contributes to the mistreatment of animals is the concept of speciesism. Speciesism is a concept of justifying the exploitation of other species with the superiority of humans. So think about in our culture, eating specific animals or wearing the skins of some animals, like dogs or cats, is a barbaric idea. But on the other hand, you wear the skin of a cow almost every single day in your shoes. And obviously, if you eat meat, then you support the consumption and the slaughter of cows and chickens. So it's ingrained in our brains that some animals are here on planet Earth for our benefit, and the others are seen as companions. Anti-speciesism is the idea that an animal does not deserve to suffer for just being. And this is incredibly summarized by the philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who says, the question is not, can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? This is all a very disturbing perspective on such a common occurrence in our daily lives. And I, like many of you, I'm sure, once had no idea whatsoever of the harm being caused to animals in the food industry. But through research, I learned more about the issues at hand, and I'm super excited to share this information with you today. So a lot of you might be thinking, okay, what do you want me to do about this? I love hot dogs, I love pepperoni pizza, I love burgers so much, and honestly, none of this is really affecting me. And actually, it is affecting you. I mean, that's true. I love burgers, but it is affecting you. And I would follow up with a common example of our harm to the environment and our animals, our harm to the environment and animals coming back to bite us in the butt. And that is where plastic, some way, makes its way into the ocean and over the years degrades into something called microplastic, so tiny, tiny pieces of plastic, which is then eaten by a fish. This fish is then caught, killed, and eaten by you. Except you're not only eating the fish, you're also eating the plastic, and this leads to serious long-term health problems. There's a similar occurrence in the meat that comes from abusive farms. You might be thinking, I'm just gonna have a burger, I'm just gonna have a chicken wing. But actually, you're also ingesting all of the steroids, all of the drugs, and all of the chemicals given to these animals to keep them alive in abusive conditions. And it's also more likely that you'll contract a zoonotic pathogen or a foodborne disease. So the next time you're in the grocery store and you see the labels like ethically raised or cage-free, turn around and head over to the organic section, because in the end, it's better for you and your health, and it's better for the animals. However, buying organic can be very inaccessible for a lot of people, and to change this, we need to lobby our government to force abusive farms to bear the full cost of the harm that they're causing to our health, the environment, and the animals. This makes organic products so much more competitive. The first step into solving these problems about animal welfare is knowing about them. And together we can build a more ethical and sustainable food system by carrying this knowledge with us and letting it guide our choices throughout the grocery store and beyond. Thank you so much.
Wow, definitely going to reconsider my diet. Our next speaker is a 9th grader. She's an artist and a storyteller interested in human rights issues. They spend their free time learning about art from cultures around the world. They love bouldering and writing. Their next big D&D campaign. The student is near and dear to my heart, and they bring a concept sharing that art can be powerful and a painful process. Let's give it up for Bea Bunker.
Take this. When you hear D&D, you probably think about a bunch of kids sitting in a room screaming about fantasy monsters. You're pretty much right on the dot, except it can be so much more than that. This is Allie. This is a D&D character that I made for like a week-long thing last year. And this character has taught me how to enjoy drawing again, because I used to love it when I was little, and then I stopped for a long time. And I've been drawing this character for over a year now, and I've been developing this character for over a year now. And throughout that time, I've found a couple of things. Putting yourself into your art is a hard thing to do, and it creates a tricky situation where you have to confront even the things that you don't like about yourself. And I do that with this character. She is scared to disappoint people. She runs away when she's worried that she's letting someone down, and she lies when she thinks that someone will be upset with her. However, she also supports her friends with everything they do, or she loves her family unconditionally, and she really likes books. But something else that's happened, I found, with this character is she's taken on a life of her own. She has all this stuff going on in this world that she's a part of, and she's not me. However, that means that I can still confront this character and see how this character reacts to things, and continue to put pieces of me in and take some out. Because escapism, for me personally, isn't healthy, but what I've done is I have to look at it. I can't run away from it. And across this year, my art style has developed. These two drawings were just a couple months apart. And while the one on your right is an earlier one, I personally like it less. It has a different style than the one on your left. The key thing there is that it's all up to personal choice and what you like. So when you go to write something or sing something, who cares about what other people think? It's all for you. And this channels into art with many different aspects. For drawing, it tends to be in line work or coloring. For example, this drawing has a much sketchier look with very, very hard shadows, and I personally don't really like it that much anymore. But it's a really enjoyable thing to do, and it helps me through a lot of challenges. And when you take that and combine it with just the fact that it's a creative outlet, and creative outlets are great, if you ask me. But that really brings into the next section of mental health. I experience the occasional mental health challenge, as with many other teens in our country and across the world. Specifically, for me, it channels in through a thing called gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria, if you don't know, is what happens when a person's body tends to not align with their gender or their sex characteristics. And a thing that comes in with that, for me, is height. And this creature, as you can see here, very tall. And the next thing is height. The average height for a girl my age is about 5'4". I'm standing in just a little over 7 inches taller than that on a good day. But that was something that when I created that last drawing was particularly impactful for me. And I've, through making that drawing, seen it, confronted it, and seen that's not me. And or more so, that's not all I am. I'm so much more than that. So here's the thing as well. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. You can make stuff for fun. This character represents absolutely nothing about me. And I just wanted to make a drawing for fun. And it's sketchy, it's rough. I put stock images in because I didn't feel like drawing anything else. But what I have for you now is this. Next time you have to confront your feelings, or when you want to run away, or when something feels just too hard, the last thing you need to do is, well, run away from it. So write it, draw it, sing it, paint it, really do whatever it takes to get that out of your head and into the world. Thank you.
Our next speaker brings wisdom from a grandparent. Maya loves theater and debate. When she's not in front of an audience, she enjoys reading realistic fiction, creating book reviews, and science videos on YouTube. Please welcome Maya Dehgan to the stage.
I've been to many, many weddings, but by far the most unusual thing I've ever heard of happening at a wedding was the time when a man showed up to a wedding in his work clothes, which would be the current equivalent of you showing up to your sister's wedding in a beach outfit. He enjoyed the reception, was brought to a simple room, and was served a simple chicken broth soup for dinner. Now in Iran, weddings are big, multi-day parties, and he arrived to the next night of the reception in a fancy tuxedo, which he had had at home but hadn't had time to change into the night before. That night, while most of those same people were brought to the simple room, he was brought to a much fancier room with much better food, like kebab and rice and all the best fixings. But the moment the man was served his food, he grabbed a fistful of his shirt and shoved it into his food, saying, "Close eat food, close eat rice." Everyone was so confused, and when they asked him what he was doing, he replied, "This food isn't for me. This food is for my clothes, and my clothes are the reason I'm getting this food." Which is why in Iran, when you want someone to wear their fancy clothes, you say, "Lebase polo khori," which means rice-eating clothes. While this may just seem like a simple, silly Iranian folktale that my grandfather told me a few years ago, it has a very real lesson, one which Iranian poet Saadi explains quite well. He said, "If people are people because of their eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, then why aren't pictures and paintings people?" Saadi was a philosopher, and like many other Iranian poets, he disguised himself as a poet to hide his philosophical views, which were highly illegal. Hi everyone, I'm Maya. I'm a quarter Vietnamese, a quarter Chinese, and half Iranian. My mom is from Tehran, Vietnam, but Chinese by heritage, and my dad is from Tehran, Iran, where my grandfather is from as well. I've lived in West Seattle all my life. During the pandemic, I would Zoom call with my grandfather every other day, and we would talk for an hour, or maybe even just half an hour, and everything we said was in Farsi. While for most people, the quarantine pulled them apart, this quarantine brought me so much closer to my grandfather. We started over the summer with children's books. He would read the first sentence aloud to me, and I would echo him, trying and successfully failing to connect what he was saying to the meaningless scribbles on the page. When I finally graduated from the children's books, he started teaching me poems by all the greatest Iranian poets, like Saadi, Hafiz, and Ferdowsi. One day, we finally got our own English copy of the famous Epic of Kings, and my grandfather started explaining each scene to me, page by page. In the over 2 years that we continued these calls, I formed a special connection with my grandfather, an unbreakable bond. And the picture of me here in gold is the first time I had ever gone to see my grandfather. He had always come to us, to visit us, but this time, me and my dad came to him. He lives somewhere in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Saskatchewan, Canada, 2 hours away from the nearest hospital. But I remember every moment of that trip, how nice everyone in the town was, how nice he was to everyone in the town. According to the 2020 census, over 500,000 Iranians live in the US. And we're not alone. As of February 2024, there are 51.4 million first-generation immigrants in the US. We live in a world and a country rich in diverse cultures, history, and values. The world has so much to offer to us, and by learning just a little bit more about the world, we can learn so much more about ourselves. It can connect us to fascinating people and build great communities. You might not have an Iranian grandpa, but everyone has an interesting person they can talk to, which is why I want you to do 3 things over the next week. I want you to do 1, set up a call with someone you appreciate in your life. For me, that was my grandpa, but for you, that could be a sibling or your favorite barista. 2, I want you to find a piece of writing, like a poem or a folktale, and see what it makes you realize about yourself. And 3, I want you to try and connect with someone from an older generation and see what you might learn about how thrilling it can be to connect with someone who already has the wisdom that you need. In the past year, I did a presentation for my communications class, and we learned about our core values. My core value was communication, and all of these 3 things that I just told you to do involve communication. By setting up a call with someone you appreciate, it teaches you how amazing it is to appreciate someone and to be appreciated in return. by finding a piece of writing, you connect with someone who you may have never even met, but you can still relate to. And by connecting with someone from an older generation, you communicate with the past and see what you can relate to in the history and all the histories. It's not hard to talk or to be curious, but we often overlook the power that talking with others has, even when it can teach us about ourselves. In Iran, we have this thing called ta'aruf, which is a formality, something we say to respect each other. For example, you wouldn't invite someone to your house this Friday night by saying, "Would you like to come to our house this Friday night?" Which seems polite enough. You would say, "We would love to have your honorable presence bring honor to our humble home this Friday night." Yeah, intense. And I am so grateful to you, my audience, my honorable and distinguished audience, for your precious time and attention listening to my humble presentation.
I am Kristin Leong. I am Seatown's other co-founder and teacher, and I am thrilled to be introducing our first speaker for our second half. Daniel Lee is an 11th grader. He's an international baccalaureate student. He's also part of the Running Start program at North Seattle College. His talk is entitled, "What I Learned from Forcing My Friends to Support Me." Please give it up for Daniel Lee.
Imagine this. You're about to speak in front of a huge crowd of people. You're nervous, palms sweaty, knees shaking. That was me. About 30 seconds ago. Now, that may also be you, and you might be thinking, "No way, this guy's lying. He's a natural." But it's true. You see, I discovered the path to becoming not only a TED Talk speaker, but a better person overall was not a solitary one. It was a path paved with the bricks of community, collaboration, and courageous participation. And the only reason I can stand in front of y'all today is because of the wonderful support system I have. And some are actually here today. Hi, y'all. A common misconception most of us have is that there are two types of people, the natural-born people and those who aren't. That for the people who aren't, it's possible to get better at whatever discipline it is, but impossible to reach the level of those natural-born people. Well, not only do I want to say that's wrong, it's completely wrong. And if you don't believe me, let's go back to my first public speaking opportunity on June 20th, 2023 at 10:37 a.m. Yes, that is me. I was stood behind that black curtain just a few feet away from where I'd be talking to my entire school. I remember it so clearly, how nervous I was, peering out into the crowd that was shrouded in darkness, and how brightly the stage was illuminated with just that single podium sat there. And it was at that podium where I delivered my speech. And my speech was bad. This speech that I spent months working on was filled with me forgetting some of my lines, repeating words, and stuttering like crazy. I mean, I was always told that starting was the hardest part, and that once I started, everything would just go right, and my confidence would only grow. For me, it was the opposite. It felt with every sentence, my confidence was diminishing. With every sentence, my throat felt just a little bit drier, and with every sentence, my voice just a little bit fainter. After what felt like an eternity, I finally finished my speech. And as I was about to hurry off stage, to my surprise, the entire crowd erupted into cheers, and applause echoed throughout the entire auditorium. And it was in that moment when I was filled with so much pride and gratitude for myself, for accomplishing something not only that I've never done before, but something that I've always been anxious about. Now, yes, that all may seem a bit cliche, and it is my own memory, so maybe I distorted it in some way to make myself believe more people liked it than they actually did. Here's the thing though, I don't know how many people actually liked it, and I never will. But what I do know is that I got my friends to cheer extra, extra loud for me. And when you see a group of people so passionately cheering on someone, that might make you want to cheer them on just a little bit more. And that might make the person sitting next to you cheer them on just a little bit more. And the effect just compounds over and over again. So it was only after everything that I realized the difference wasn't just in my own determination, but in the determination of those who I surrounded myself with. my friends who believed in me and supported me from the start. From peer pressuring me to do it in the first place, to helping me write my speech, helping me practice it, to voting for me and cheering me on in an election that I actually won. Thank you. Now, a fact I usually like to omit from that is that I was the only one running, but the point still stands. Looking back on that, and looking back on my old self that was so nervous and trembling and about to puke in front of his entire school, to the person so confidently about to puke in front of all of you, I'm filled with so much pride and gratitude, not just for myself, but for those who supported me. And it's for all those reasons that I find it so concerning that a widely popularized idea concerning masculinity is the fact that you have to tune out your emotions, isolate yourself from loved ones, and work until you break, aka the villain arc, where you do all those things, and heck, I've even tried it myself, and I saw some results. But frankly, it's unhealthy and unsustainable, especially to the younger audience it's being pushed onto. I mean, when we're pushing a message like that, it's no wonder that a whopping 37% of young boys and men are experiencing mental health difficulties. And of that 37%, half are unable or unwilling to ask for help. That is nearly 1 in every 5 young boys and men. And I get it. Asking for help is hard. It could be embarrassing, and at times, you could feel unworthy of asking for that help. But it's in those times of embarrassment and vulnerability that you'll learn about the true power of community. I don't know if you have that community, and maybe you think you don't have that community, but it's never too late to start building one. You could talk to somebody at school or work, talk to somebody at the bus, or heck, even the person sitting there right next to you right now. It doesn't matter. It's never too late to start building a community and surrounding yourself with the individuals who support you, believe in you, and will catch you when you fall, because falling is inevitable. But those who fall and get back up are so much stronger than those who never fell at all. To all of you sitting here today, if you were to take one thing from this talk, it should be to take an active role in surrounding yourself with individuals who believe in you. Be your own active support system until you can find a support system to help you. Find the people who believe in you, support in you, and that you trust in asking for help. So I ask that you all join me as we go down this unknown, confusing, yet amazing path we call life together.
Our next speaker, Victoria Bai, is a 6th grader, one of our 2 6th graders that's part of Seatown Story Collective. She is a lead student ambassador at her school, where she is also a competitor on the debate team. Her talk is entitled, How to Identify the Toxic People in Your Life. Please welcome Victoria Bai.
This is what some people in my school call me, insensitive. At school, sometimes when I hang out with my friends, I get criticized for some things I'm used to. I sometimes try to argue back, but they manage to twist my words around. There are a lot of people like these in the world. Some might call them toxic. Some might just not recognize them. Are these people worth being friends with? I am not here to complain about my life as much as I want to. I'm here to talk to you about how maybe toxic people can change. Through my own journey, I have learned that anybody has the ability to grow and be someone they want. I will start by sharing to you 6 types of toxic people I learned about. The first one is the energy drainer. They are exhausting to work with, drains positivity and optimism, and can be very distracting. Next is the fake complimenter. They say things and think bad things about you, but on the outside, they might say really nice things and for you around. Next is the pessimist. They only see bad side of everything. They can ruin emotions, and sometimes they refuse to change. Next is the criticizer. Similar to the pessimist, they also say unsupportive things, and they can purposely do things, even if they recognize it. Next is the victim. They act innocent and get and everything they do is for attention. Lastly are the manipulators. You probably see them around all the time. However, they're very hard to recognize. And they're really good at twisting situations and are good at making obvious threats, but you just can't do anything about them. I wanted to make this speech at first to help the people around me recognize the toxic people in their life. I wish by making this speech, I can help people that have once faced things that I have also been through. However, as time passed, as I did more researches about toxic people, I learned that perhaps I can fit into one of the top categories. It was hard, the self-realization, but it also helped me to become a better person myself. However, what led me to this person? What led me to being a toxic friend? Well, I guess it all started in 6th grade. At the beginning of 6th grade, I had a friend called, let's just call her Jenny. I was really, really close to her. Every day I would spend time with her, I would hang out with her every day, and I just ignored basically everyone around me. And even though, although there were some flaws about her, such as criticizing her own art just to get attention, I decided that this is her and she's my friend and I cannot betray her. However, as time passed, I sort of just got tired of those behaviors and started talking to someone else. Let's just call her Sophia. She told me that she disliked Jenny a lot as well. And well, since knowing that she also disliked her, I was like, okay, there's a friend I can talk to. However, there was this one day, something that I have never imagined happened. I was called to the middle school director's office because apparently I was sending threat messages to Jenny. I didn't know what's going on. I just thought, oh, okay, someone might be coming up with things about me. However, it was not until after I stepped out of that office I learned that Sophia had betrayed me. She told me that she had sent all our messages to Jenny. She told me that she actually did not dislike her as much, and that she chose to send those messages because she said that what I was saying she disliked. Now, from that day on, I changed. That was what led me to become a toxic person. For me, that betrayal meant so much to me. I decided that I cannot let myself be vulnerable around the people around me again. I needed to be stronger. However, the way I became stronger was not the way I intended. Going back to my original goal of making this speech, I have something to add to it. It's self-awareness. As I research about the things I'm going to talk about, I became self-aware about the things I have been acting. Like me, when you first start doing that, it might feel really bad. However, later on, you might realize it's good. It's a good change, and even if you're not ready for it, you will be as you learn more. I want to end with something that I thought about while doing the research, and it's this. Don't expect others to change for you. Learn how to be a good person for yourself. Thank you.
Kamakshi Shirodkar is an 8th grader. She is the founder of the Desi Affinity Group at her school, where she is also a leader in the student government. Her talk is entitled, How to Be Whitewashed Just Enough. Please welcome to the stage, Kamakshi Shirodkar.
Growing up Indian in a community of white people is no easy feat. When you have white friends, go to white schools, and are surrounded by white people, it's hard to represent your culture. I'm different from my peers in so many ways, my name being the biggest difference. My full name is Kamakshi Shirodkar, but so many people had trouble pronouncing it, I had to shorten it to Kamu. I've gotten so many different responses, from one swim coach saying Kamu as in communism, to a basketball coach totally giving up and renaming me Kay, without asking. Another way I'm different is my appearance. Yes, my hair and skin are dark, but when I was in kindergarten, a certain girl really liked to point that out for me. She used to call me a bear because my arms and legs are very hairy. Another girl said that the lines on my hands looked like they were colored in with marker. Speaking of my appearance, Speaking of my appearance, apparently according to teachers, I look like every other Indian girl in my school. The amount of times I've been confused for another Indian girl that I don't even slightly resemble by my own teachers is insane. Because of all this, I really wanted to fit in. I was tired of sticking out against my white peers. I never really talked about my Indian culture, and I just tried my best to make myself as much like everyone else as possible. But I realized something throughout my middle school years, and that is I don't want to change myself. I love my... Sorry.
It's very sensitive for mode. Let's see.
I love my Indian culture, and it's not my problem if other people can't understand it. I'm so grateful to be part of this rich culture that spans thousands of years. Yes, I'm still not the most Indian girl out there. I don't speak Hindi or Marathi. I rarely wear Indian clothes, and I don't go to the temple that often, but I can understand a bit of both languages from my parents. I love shopping for Indian clothes with my mom, and I have a small Indian altar that I can pray to every day. So, although it is hard to be part of the 1% in the USA, I wouldn't trade it for anything else. The problem with this is even though now I'm fully secure in myself and not at all confused, society tries to fit people like me into boxes. Either I can be whitewashed and fully assimilate with everyone else, or I should be offended with every interaction with someone who doesn't know how to pronounce my name or can't confuse me with someone else. It's like I'm walking this tightrope between two worlds, and sometimes it gets exhausting to constantly stay balanced. It's this all-or-nothing mentality that our society has that gets people so confused. There's a common term to describe people like me, ABCD, American-born confused Desi. It was created by generations past because of the strict culture that Desi parents had, like bringing Indian food to school or walking around with oil in your hair. These things that some white people may frown upon can cause Indian kids to want to assimilate, and that is what causes the confusion. Luckily, my parents never did that to me, so I was free to explore my culture and figure out myself without being forced to do anything. I used to get really frustrated when people couldn't pronounce my name, but since then I've realized that it's not just a me problem. This is a whole immigrant problem. Recently, my mom showed me an interview of Saoirse Ronan, and where she shows us how to pronounce her name. It's spelled S-A-O-I-R-S-E, but it's pronounced Saoirse. The interview is actually really funny, and it made me realize that I can choose not to get mad when people say things like that to me. For example, if I went to a country where I didn't speak their native language, wouldn't I struggle to pronounce their names? So how can I blame everyone for not being able to say mine? I believe the other reason I'm so secure is because of all the representation that we have today. A few years ago, there were no Indians anywhere. Not in books, TV shows, magazines, or anything. Today, look how far we've come. Our own vice president, Kamala Harris, is half Indian. One of the hit TV shows on Netflix, Never Have I Ever, is starring an Indian woman. Me, I'm up here today giving a talk that will be posted on YouTube for the world to see. Unfortunately, according to a Nielsen study in 2021, South Asian women such as myself only occupy 0.3% of screen time in the media. However, that is 0.3% more than what we've had in recent years. Today is not an ideal world by any means, but I'm hoping that me and my generation can fix that, so no little Indian girl will ever be confused about identity like me.
Our next speaker, Finn Leong, he is a 10th grader. He is a 2023 Echo X Journalism Fellow, and he is currently part of the Museum of Pop Culture's Youth Advisory Board. Finn's talk is entitled, Life Lessons I Learned While Riding the Bus. Please welcome Finn Leong.
It was 6th grade, and it was the first time I was asked to ride the bus on my own. All I had to do was get home. My house was not far, but I had zero guidance from my parents, which I was used to. Well, I ended up going the wrong way, and I ended up all the way at the University of Washington, which is the opposite of my house. So I was really lost. We got some 6th graders here, but I was not very smart in 6th grade, so I was just really confused. I was asking strangers what to do. You know, I just wanted to see my mom. I started to cry, you know. So fast forward to today. I take the bus 12 times a week, at least 12 times a week, from quick commutes to school to adventures that span all across like the state, like with lots of transfers. I'm pretty much the last person to ask for a car ride. It took me 4 years to develop the skills I have now, and I've learned 3 essential life lessons from that. 1, time management and patience and problem solving. The metro is not consistent. You have to calculate if the bus is going to be early, late, and like how fast you can walk there. These years trained me. My problem solving skills also have improved. A lot of people don't take the bus because they're afraid of its inconsistencies. It's easy to see the appeal of just being able to hop inside your car. But I've learned that it's easy to get used to these inconsistencies and adapt to them. The times don't even fluctuate as much as you might think. I can plan ahead on the bus apps and walk even at certain speeds to reach the bus on time and enjoy the walk around me. It's taught me to be patient, resilient, and level-headed. The second thing I've learned from riding the bus is that strangers are not so scary. I used to be really afraid of strangers, especially some of them special strangers in Seattle. And I probably still would be if it wasn't for what I've learned from the bus. I've learned a lot about who I am too. I've learned to embrace the diversity that the bus has to offer because the metro is like a connection point for the whole city. People from all walks of life take the bus, and it taught me to fit in a way that I've never fit in before. It acts as like a break from life where you can just sit down and see all these different people you've never seen before. The third thing I've learned is independence. I said before that I'm the last guy to ask for a car ride. The bus is the first taste of freedom for a lot of youth, especially in Seattle. On September 1st, 2022, minors, a law was passed that lets minors ride the bus for free, thanks to Move Ahead Washington, which is funded by the Climate Commitment Act. I think the rest of the nation should follow in Washington's steps. The bus seems mundane and small, but lessons that the bus can teach can't be learned anywhere else. Like being level-headed, outgoing, and capable are some things I've learned from the bus that I don't know where I would learn somewhere else. I'm just sharing my love for riding the bus, but you can help too. So if you're in Washington, we got some people from Washington, I'd say support Move Ahead Washington. It's easy to show your support. You can vote, so you know what to do. If you're under 18 and can't vote, simply use that free bus pass you have all the time, and they track that thing. If you're not in Washington, maybe you're just visiting, talk to a local representative in your state and tell them that the youth deserve the life lessons that the bus has to offer. It's very important that I think the whole country should have this initiative that Move Ahead Washington started. So with all that said, next time you open Google Maps, maybe click on the bus route option, even if it takes a little longer.
Our next speaker, Jinie Chon. Now, I also want to share a little good news with all of you guys today, and I asked Jinie if this was okay for me to share with everybody. But Jinie Chon is a 17-year-old second-year law student at the University of Washington. Let's give it up for Jinie. The really exciting news that I'd love to share and just celebrate Jinie for a second is that she just got accepted to Stanford, and she's going to be transferring to Stanford in the fall. So let's give it up for Jinie. Hold on. In addition to being a second-year law student at the University of Washington, Jinie is also the Family Court Report's 2023 to 2024 Reporting Fellow. She's also an intern with the Washington State Human Rights Commissioner and a council member on UW's College of Arts and Sciences Dean Advisory Board. Her talk is entitled Lemons, Cockroaches, and Rain, 3 important lessons from rejection. Please give it up for Jinie Chon.
Hey Jinie, I'm sorry to inform you, we won't be accepting your application. Hey Jinie, after careful consideration, we regret to inform you we won't be offering you the position. Hey Jinie, we already found someone else. You know, a lot of people say hard work leads to results. Hard work should lead to success. You know, if that was the case, I would like to ask you, what happened to all of these rejections? In the past several weeks, I spent a lot of time preparing resumes, preparing personal statements, you know, preparing mock interviews, like looking myself in the mirror and saying, you know, like, hey, tell me about yourself. Oh yeah, I'm Jinie, and you know, spewing out all of this stuff. But I ended up with 17 rejections, 3 no responses, and a 0% success rate. And so, what could I do now? You know, if the interviewer asks, hey, could you tell me about yourself? I might as well say, hey, I'm Jinie. I'm a college student, and I got rejected from every other position, so, you know, can you accept me to this one? Is all I could say. Yeah, but also, my mom raised no quitter. She's the type of mom to drop you off 30 minutes early to the school, even though it's like a snow day, and it's like the Arctic snow. Yeah, she was also part of the 2016 Olympic archery team, so if that kind of gives you a perspective of how much resilience runs in the blood, yeah. So I decided to apply to a bunch of other positions, and right now I'm going to cover 3. The first one I applied to was a legal internship. You know, something that seemed like a wild, distant dream. I didn't think I would get it. Exactly why I applied. The second one I applied to was a political consulting firm. You know, what kind of company doesn't want an intern who's been rejected by every other company? Yeah. And then the third one I applied to was an international nonprofit. The last time I checked, there's the word rejection in every single language, so I might as well get rejected from every corner of the globe. You know, and as I stared at the white screen in front of me, I made a sigh of relief, and I submitted all 3 applications, even though I didn't have any acceptances before. Several weeks passed, and my inbox remained very scarily silent. I mean, what was I expecting? I got rejected 17 times, 3 no responses, and what gave me the confidence to apply to the other 3 positions? And just as I was about to slam my laptop shut, I got my first email, which read, congratulations, we'd like to offer you a position. And this was from the legal internship, you know, something that I felt like was a wild, distant dream. The second one, after careful consideration, we'd like to bring you on board. It was from the political consulting firm, and I guess they really liked my 17 rejections. Yep, and the last one was from the international nonprofit. This is a translated copy, but maybe they just didn't have the word rejected in their language. Maybe that's why they said they were impressed. And so, with these 3 acceptances, I felt a better sense of confidence. But even after these 3 emails, I also received another one. I received an email from one of the 3 no responses I talked about earlier. They said, I'm sorry, but it wasn't that kind of sorry where they say, I'm sorry, we don't want you in our position. It was actually a genuine apology. They said, you know, we are kind of behind on reviewing applications and we still want to give you a chance. And so I took on the interview. I made it to my first research position. And a couple of years later, right now, I just presented on my first symposium on a research paper I've been working on for 2 years. Thank you. And the 3 positions I applied to provided a great foundation for several other positions later on. So why am I telling you this story? Well, I wanted to share 3 life lessons. The first one being lemons. You know, you've probably heard when life gives you lemons, you should make lemonade. I don't think so. I really don't like lemonade. Not only that, but why make lemonade when you can just squeeze them into your eyes? You know, brand new perspective. You know, take those lemons and squeeze them. You know, not medical advice, but I still think it provides a brand new perspective that you can't get anywhere else. Second one, cockroaches. Did you know cockroaches can live several days or even weeks without a head or a limb or multiple limbs? Now, I'm not saying you look for opportunities to cut off your limbs or head. Yeah, not medical advice here. But I am saying we should embrace rejections like cockroaches embrace survival. Last lesson. Even when it's raining and even when the ground is muddy, I would say show the rain that you still have a couple moves to bust out. Even when it's raining rejection letters, I would say take your chances and go out there. So why am I telling you these 3 lessons? I'm not guaranteeing that these 3 lessons are going to bring you 17 no rejections, 3 no responses, and 4 acceptances. And I also can't guarantee that it'll bring you any acceptances at all. In fact, you might end up, after following all of these, you might still be at 0 acceptances. But what I am saying is that following these 3 lessons can make any rejection more meaningful, make any success even more sweet. And so, whether you're squeezing lemons into your eyes or like trying to cut off a limb or 2, I'm gonna say every rejection is a testament to your strength. Every rejection is a testament to your resilience. Again, thank you so much. I'm Jinie Chon, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Our speaker today is Haley Foster. She is an 8th grader. She is an award-winning equestrian, and in fact, just last weekend, she was a champion at a horse show in Canada. She's also a core member of her school's leadership team, and she's an aspiring veterinarian. Her talk today is entitled Divorce from the Daughter's Perspective. Please welcome Haley Foster.
I'm a nationally ranked equestrian, soccer player, golfer, skier, and I'm on my school's student leadership team. I'm also a sister, a daughter, a granddaughter, and a friend. I'm an overachiever. However, twice a week, my soccer cleats are not where they're supposed to be. 3 times a week, it takes a whole car to get my things from house to house. At the end of the week, you would think I'm exhausted from all of the sports and extracurriculars, but it's actually that I know the next week will be another week of I don't know where my backpack is. My parents got a divorce when I was 6 years old. Since then, I've had to grow up and deal with the challenges that come with living in 2 households at once. My 2 houses are very different. When I'm with my dad, I'm with my stepbrothers, my stepmom, and my dog. When I'm with my mom, it's us and the animals, chihuahuas, cats, and chickens. Kids get put in the middle of their parents a lot. I know that there have been times where I felt isolated as a kid and alone. When your parents have challenges, it's hard sometimes to not feel like you have to play the peacekeeper role. I know that I have learned a lot from my experiences as a child of divorce, but I've realized that the only way to do everything is to find balance. Balance to me means feeling like I don't have to pick one piece of my life over another. I can be a focused athlete, but have fun with my friends too. I'm not perfect at this, and I probably never will be. But I realize that I don't want to be one of those kids that all they do is school, all they do is sports, all they do is socialize and ignore their parents. So I try and be aware and find time for everything. I think that's why I'm able to do all of the commitments that I have. Having to balance sports and friends like most teenagers is hard enough. But when you have to add on finding time to spend with your parents and your family that you only get to see half the time, things get more challenging. Feelings of letting everyone down can arise. When I think about what it means to me to let everyone down, or what would even happen if I let myself down, it's more of an internal fear than external. I fear that if I don't push myself to nearly the breaking point, I won't reach my full potential. That's my biggest fear. This is common to children of divorce. When I first started writing this talk, I thought I was writing a talk about how kids with divorced parents are forced into developing great executive functioning skills. Through the research and writing process, I have learned more about the mental toll that divorce can have on everyone involved and affected, whether you know it or not. I was not aware that I have a certain level of anxiety coming from my home situation until crafting this talk. I am not one to dwell on the fact that divorce is hard. Everyone knows that. I'm a believer that you need to make the absolute best of every situation that is put in front of you. Almost half the kids in the United States of America are children of divorce. That's the real reason why I decided to get involved with crafting this talk. People often tell me that I'm super mature for my age, but I credit this to having to go through my parents splitting up when I was 6, blending families, and having to worry about where my favorite stuffed animal was. Kids that you see that look poised on the outside might be the biggest mess on the inside, and you don't even know. My point is, I don't see my parents' divorce as a weakness. I see all the things that I've learned from it as my greatest strength. Statistically, either 50% of the people in this room are either divorced or part of a family where there is divorce. I am sick of people telling me that they feel sorry for me because my parents divorced when I was so young. There are millions of kids just like me across the globe. And here are 2 things that you can do for kids like me that have nothing to do with pity. Do not assume that you should feel sorry for kids that have divorced parents. This has been a challenge for me and will continue to affect me for the rest of my life. But it has also given me the power to become the person that I am today. And lastly, I want you to take away from this that under all of my accomplishments, organization, maturity, and constant need to overachieve, I'm still a kid, and I too still struggle. Behind the poised person on the outside, there might be someone on the inside that still needs your help. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. Thank you all. Great job today, everyone.
Thank you. Awesome job.